Hi, my name's Keith Cooper, Northlight Images. In this video I'm going to talk about cardstock, printing on cards. The reason for this is that if there's a question I get asked about printing that recurs over and over again is, can I print such and such cardstock on a particular printer, or I want to print some particular cardstock, and it'll be something I've never heard of, on a printer, such and such a printer. And almost always, and this is the reason I'm doing the video, almost always if somebody talks to me about cardstock, I can tell you up front that you almost certainly will not be able to produce good looking prints on it on any of the inkjet printers that I've reviewed. Now, that's not to say there aren't printers that can print on cardstock. Obviously UC printed cards, so there must be, but that's commercial printing and it's a very different technology. So what do I mean when people say cardstock? Typically, I mean, when I say cards, I'm thinking of stuff like this. These are cards that I produced in the process of my testing printers. And these ones have come ready cut, ready creased. I'll mention some more about types of card later, but typically these are meant for greeting card printing. Cardstock itself typically comes in large sheets, cut it down, use it. It's what's used commercially for packaging and all kinds of things. A similar version of this is somebody says, I would like to print on such and such watercolour paper, or I'd like to be able to use a paper that I use for my watercolour prints to be able to print over them, or to print something and then paint over them. Similarly, that rarely works. Why do you have the problem? Why is there the problem? Why does it print okay on card like that, albeit thin card? Some printers will take thicker card, but they have a straight through print path. But even so, the key to understanding what will print and what will print well, not just get ink onto the card, is understanding the coatings. All of these media here are designed for inkjet use. So if you have a particular card, whether it's used for crafting or anything else like that, and you use the generic term cardstock with it, it almost certainly won't be properly coated to accept the inks from inkjet printers. What happens when you print on it? Well, I've got another video, and I put a link in that I did quite some time ago, showing the problem of when you use the wrong card. Basically, the inks may run, they may bleed, you don't get much depth in the colours, you don't get any sharpness of line, all those things that you probably do want to include in your prints. Likewise, if you use watercolour paper has certain properties that the watercolours spread in it. You work with the paper when you're doing watercolours. If you're doing pen and ink, you treat it differently, but you know the characteristics of the paper and how liquids run in it and how you can get washes and things like that. Well, the inks, whether they're dye-based inks or pigment inks, and it makes no real difference whether it's a dye-based printer or a pigment ink printer in this, the prints, the papers you meant for inkjet use specifically don't run. The whole idea is that those tiny droplets of ink that come out of the print head and hit the paper, they stay as tiny dots, they don't expand. In reality, with some papers they do expand slightly, but that's something you take care of when you're selecting your printers, and that's also what printer driver media settings do. They alter how the ink is laid down on the paper for most inkjet printers. So it's all about the wrong surface. So it really, in many ways, doesn't matter what your cardstock is. If it's not intended for inkjet use, you're going to get useless prints out of it. And that, I get feeling, disappoints a lot of people because they've already decided on a cardstock they want to print their greetings cards or whatever on, and now they want a printer. That's the wrong way round. If you pick that, you may well find the only if you find that a particular cardstock, you may find the only way of printing on that is to use commercial offset press printing, a commercial print process. which then you tend to print things multiple instances on a larger sheet, and then they're cut to shape. Cut to shape also deals with the borderless problem, because many printers don't perform as well when you want to do borderless printing, and you can see on this one it's borderless. Now I've got templates and things for this, but you can see the image goes slightly over the curve here, over the fold, so that you don't get a little white line on it from this side. Now that's a paper size, because that's A4 folded makes A5. That's a paper size which I can print borderless on many printers. There's some examples. Here's the print from it from when I was testing the ET8550. That's a watercolour print, a watercolour image itself, an actual watercolour printed, painted by a friend of mine. And I've scanned it and I've printed it. Now there's all details, and I'll put links again in the notes to this video about how I scanned the original and produced cards. Now the cards look spot on. They look very good, and also because they're slightly smaller than the original, they even look a little bit crisper and sharper because of the reduction on it. That one is printed borderless as well, although the image has white around the edge, so you don't really notice. There is a bordered print. Now, no printer that I know of that I've tested supports custom paper sizes for borderless printing. I do not know why it is. I cannot see any true technical reasons for this. So it's a software, internal firmware issue for both Canon and Epson. Neither of them have printers which allow borderless printing on an arbitrary custom paper size. I have no idea why that is. It just is. It means that you want to print this little size, here's that same image there. I've had to print it with a border. Now I've made it a bigger border to make it a bit more of a feature, but you have to be careful with things like that. Yeah, border doesn't matter, there's white down the edge there. So that's that. Now, here's another example, reason for using the right paper or the right card. You need printer profiles. So ideally it helps, and these are both from a local company, Paper Spectrum, here in Leicester, that had quite a range of greeting cards available. They come with envelopes. This is a semi-gloss card, and this is a cotton rag card. Now, what happens if you haven't got profiles for them? Well, you get things like this example here, where the water, where the colour looks wrong. If you print with the wrong profile or don't print with a profile on some arbitrary card, whether it be whatever surface it is, you can have things like the colour's not quite right, the shadows get blocked up. This one the image just looks wrong. Now, given you're producing pictures that you supposedly, I'm going to say, want to sell, and therefore you have to impress people with them, you do not want rubbish colours, so hence using a profile for it. Now, I've got details of this in all my printer reviews and things, and different ones I look at. Are there some printers that will print well on generic cardstock? Well, I've mentioned commercial printing. Obviously, you can pay to get stuff printed. And if you're doing sufficient volumes, it may actually work out cheaper to get custom sheets printed and then cut. Card making is a very low margin business, so the costs of ink and various things matter. But remember, if you're going to be producing many cards, none of these printers I've looked at, this is a Canon Pro 300, I believe, pigment ink printer. That is an ET8550 Epson printer. That one is a combination of pigment and dye inks. In none of these printers can you stack up many cards. Now, I looked at an office printer, another Epson EcoTank model, where you could stack a few cards, but then that didn't offer borderless printing at all. So there just are not many printers that are good for this stuff in any volume, because you will quickly realize if you're printing much of a volume that actually you're spending far more time just loading sheets in, taking sheets out and doing things like that. Now, if you've got nothing better to do, that's fine, but if you're doing this as part of a business, that does not seem a very profitable use of your time. So the key element, what you want, if you were say, I've got such and such cardstock and I want a printer to print on it, none of the printers I've looked at here will likely work. Now it's possible, check with who makes the paper or the card, it's possible it may be coated for inkjet use, like this, but it's highly unlikely. Not once have I ever come across something that somebody has referred to as cardstock, which has been any use whatsoever. A few laser printers will take it, but they're very fussy quite often about the feed. There are some other commercial printers, office printers, colour printers, which do seem to print on a wider variety of card, but I've never seen any of these. So I've been told about it, but I've never actually seen any. They're not from Epson, not from Canon. I know quite a lot of people at Epson and Canon UK. I've said, look, what have you got that will do this printing? And they went, nothing. Genuinely, in volume, they've got nothing. That's because if you wanted to do it in volume, you'd use a different print technology. So it's just not supported. So I'm sorry that in a way, there's quite a bit of negative here in that, no, you can't print on cardstock, but you can print, you can make nice cards. You just have to get the right media and, as I say, obviously the right profiles and things. If you've got any questions, feel free to write to me at Northlight or, comment on this video. Happy to answer questions and things. If you've got a printer that prints or know of a printer that prints on generic cardstock and gives reasonable results, then by all means let me know, and I can always try and get hold of one to have a look at and see whether it prints. But as it stands, use the proper media. You can get cards, they look very nice, but they might not be what you were hoping for. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please do subscribe to the channel if you find it useful. This is another of the hottest days in the UK this year in September, and I shall be in a hurry to get out of my non-air conditioned office. So thanks for watching, and goodbye.